before we get, the expert, the keynote speaker in here, what we want to do is just make it real, not make it polished, but have just people that have dealt with anxiety and God and just life. And so I'm proud to have my friend Ben come up. He is the founder and director of Hope Generation. He goes all over the nation speaking a message of hope because God actually delivered him from anxiety, from depression, those type of things that he's going to share with you tomorrow or tonight. And tomorrow, he's going to be speaking at Redemption Church, sharing more about that, how God delivered him from just a stint of depression and all these different things. But rather than preaching, we just want to have him come up and just sort of share what God has done in his life. So you welcome me, my friend, Ben Courson.
Thank you so much. I happened to be speaking in Miami today, and when I found out this was happening, I'm like, wow, hope is my jam, so this is perfect. I've been thinking a lot about the brain and depression and anxiety because emotions denied breathing room, science shows us, can affect your physical, intellectual, and even emotional performance. And one of the chief things brain scans have shown us about religion is one of the chief things religion does for you is it creates in you a sense of identity. So you invest profound neurological real estate into your identity formation based on what you believe about God. For me, I went through 10 years of chronic depression, not understanding who I was in God. I think this also links back, not to get all Freudian on you, but back to my childhood as well. When I was in first grade, I remember my sister Jessica was talking to my dad during dinner, and she was hearing from my dad that if she was going to date somebody, she should date somebody godlier than her, like more spiritual than her. And she went to a Christian school, so this sounded relatively easy. The problem is my sister Jessica said, Dad, I'm the godliest person at my school. I can't date anyone because I'm more spiritual than everyone at my school. And she was joking around with my dad, and my sister Jessica, amazing, amazing woman, incredible brother-sister relationship that I've got to share with her. But shortly thereafter, a few days later, she died in a car accident. And I remember I was pulled out of school, and I thought they were throwing a surprise party for me because I'd never got pulled out of school before by a next-door neighbor. I remember my next-door neighbor's eyes were the kind of gray that day. It was like the color of leftover snow that's been there 2 days too long and should just evaporate already. Her eyes seemed dead, almost soulless. I remember I walked into our house and the blinds were drawn, and if the lamps were on, they didn't seem to be doing their job. They were sapping and muting the very color from the room. My family was all crying, and they told me that my sister died in a car accident in the same way that my dad's first wife died. She also died in a car accident. And I remember my brother was the first to hear the news. And when he delivered the news to my dad, he said of my sister Jessica, she's found her man. She's found her man. The bride of Christ has found her man. She's finally found somebody perfect for her. As she is in the presence of the Lord, to be absent from the bodies, to be present with the Lord. But when I went through that, it was etched like psychic acid on my subconscious and like scar tissue that was too deep to penetrate. For me, I carried that wound of her death with me growing up. But what happened is I started to get a lot more joyful when I got into high school. We moved to Orange County. Things really seemed to be going my way. I was having a blast in high school, student body president, all conference basketball, won the homecoming crown, dated the homecoming king. I'm like going to Disneyland, living the dream. And I remember I saw people who were depressed, the emo kids, and I would in my mind think, they need to not dye their hair black, stop listening to Death Cab for Cutie, and get rid of their girl jeans. That's what I thought of these emo guys. Well, a year later, depression hit me in the middle of the forehead like a truck. It just smashed into me. And then I started listening to Death Cab for Cutie. I dyed my hair black. Now I'm the one in skinny jeans. And from 18 years old to 28 years old, I went through chronic depression. C.S. Lewis said, nobody can see the world clearly when their eyes are blurred by tears, and this is exactly what happened to me. I have a few more minutes, right? I'm still good on time?
You're good.
I'm 3 minutes in? Okay. So basically, my heart is when I went through this period of depression, it was so brutal and racked me so deeply that I made it my mission to give other people hope. That was the sticky idea and ideal, simplicity after complexity, that I knew that even after reading all of these metaphysical and philosophical and psychological tomes, I was going to have a very simple idea that I would stick to everyone's minds that I spoke to, and that was the idea of hope. Because the truth of the matter is, I believe that when you walk with, talk to, lean into, depend upon, trust in, live for the God of hope, he can heal your broken heart. Now, whatever you believe about God in the Bible, even if you don't believe it literally, you have to take it literally. Did you know that the phrase "a broken heart" was invented by the Bible? So the first time we ever see the phrase, syntax, rhetoric, lingua franca, a broken heart, in any literature of antiquity was in the ancient scriptures. So the phrase "a broken heart" traces the genesis of its origins back to ancient biblical Hebrew literature. 900 times the Bible speaks of your heart as the sum, seat, center of who you are, the nexus of your emotional existence. In the ancient Psalms, it's a book of prayers and praises and petitions. We're told that God heals the brokenhearted. God did that for me. He healed my broken heart a couple years ago. He began to apply the healing balm of Gilead to me, and suddenly what was meant for evil against me, the Lord redeemed for the good. And he showed me that pain makes me stronger, and tears make me braver, and heartbreak makes me wiser. And now I can thank my past for a better future. And like you, I've gone through tough stuff. You might say, "Ben, I have problems." Welcome to humanity. For me, I have all kinds of stuff. I have really bad OCD. Actually, I have CDO. It's like OCD, but the letters are in alphabetical order like they're supposed to be. But basically, I know what it's like to have these neurological illnesses, but what's encouraged me is some of the greatest characters in history also had depression. Lincoln was a famous example of suffering the black dog of melancholia. He would walk through the woods tempted to commit suicide. Winston Churchill talked about his black dog of depression as he would sometimes go up to a high balcony tempted to throw himself off. He wouldn't even take an apartment or a loft on a second-story floor because he said desperate thoughts do come into the head, so he didn't want to live high up lest he throw himself over and commit suicide. Again, we see that William Styron, the famous psychologist, he talked about the bank of fog rolling in every afternoon as this psychological depression that invaded his psyche. Some of the great characters in history, whether you're talking about Buzz Aldrin, the second man to land on the moon, or whether you're talking about in the Bible Elijah, who could face 850 prophets of Baal in the groves, but when an angry woman chased him, he went into a cave and asked God to kill him. The greatest characters in history have also gone through many times. MLK, Gandhi, Sherman, JFK had manic episodes. A lot of the characters that we esteem and revere went through this too. So depression is not always a sign of weakness. It's a sign that strength is on the way. That in your weakness, his strength can be made perfect, and you were not meant to stay here. Your breakdown will be someone else's future breakthrough. Because you're not just going to say, "Hear my words," you're going to say, "Touch my wounds." You're going to sympathize with other people. The word sympathy comes from the Greek syn passion. S-Y-N means together with. Passion is where we get the word passion of the Christ suffering. So it means to suffer together with other people. And for me, just checking my time, 2 more minutes. For me, God sympathized with me. And when he healed my broken heart, suddenly I now have a heart to heal other people. You say, "Well, Ben, how does he heal your broken heart?" Here's how. Neuroplasticity and neurotheology is a branch of science that is now showing us through brain scans that the mind can change. We were just talking about this a second ago, but there was a psychologist who did over 80,000 brain scans and found that the single most common denominator that he found integral, germane, and fundamental to his brain scans is that the brain can change. Neuroplasticity now shows us that through rote and repetitious practice, you can alter the grooves in your brain to go in more hopeful directions. I used to always think dark. The future belonged to an infinite gray whenever I thought about tomorrow. But what neurotheology is telling us is that if you pray to a God that you believe is angry at you, you'll have high activity in your amygdala. That's the part of your brain responsible for anger, stress, high blood pressure, and fear. If conversely you pray to a God you believe is loving, you'll have high activity in your anterior cingulate cortex. That's the part of your brain responsible for empathy, compassion, warm and fuzzy feelings, and feeling safe with God. Furthermore, when you pray to a God who is loving, you develop richer, thicker gray matter in your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain responsible for agency, consciousness, focus, concentration, and creative thinking. And the single most important thing that delivered me from depression was going on walks, talking to God, believing that he loved me, that he is for me, that the master of the kingdom would bankrupt heaven to sell everything he has to become a penniless teacher from Nazareth, to buy me his pearl of great price, that he went to the ends of the earth, even across, to prove just how much he loved me. So now I can turn my cares into prayers, my stresses into supplications, my worries into worship, and my fear into faith in my Father. I don't have to panic when I can praise. I went through a romantic heartbreak 2 years ago that left me absolutely heartbroken. My brother almost died 2 times the past 5 years due to malaria and brain tumors. Like I said, my sister died. I went through 10 years of chronic depression. My dad's first wife passed away. Sometimes life can be very, very brutal to us. But let me encourage you, my friends, that we can count it all joy, because our breakdown will prove to be God's breakthrough. And life is like a glow stick. Sometimes when we break, it's a sign that we're about to shine. Thank you.